Hello and welcome back to Typical City. It was all going so swimmingly. Everything was going so well for Manchester City. We are still top of the league. We'd all but qualified for the Champions League knockout stages midweek with a comfortable win against Young Boys. Rodri back from suspension, of course. Erling Haaland banging in goals left, right and centre. No problem for him. And then, of course, we went to Old Trafford and beat the Stretford Dolphins 3-0, pretty comfortable. And then John Stones comes back from injury as well. All of those added up to a very, very promising future. And now, problem. John Stones. I did make a video about it prior to his return that he would be key. It's hard to identify whether his return or Rodri's return resulted in Manchester City's form, recent form in particular, being so good and looking so assured on the ball and really, really comfortable. Probably a case of both players coming back at the same time resulted in City's form. I still think Rodri is the kingpin, the ultimate nucleus of our midfield that really glues everything together and really nullifies a lot of threats at both ends of the pitch in terms of creating chances. Now he's getting involved in the attacking side of the game, but his build-up play is fantastic, but he knows how to defend as well. I think he is the main player in midfield, but John Stones complements him in every way. So the fact that he's out and reportedly out for a while, we're going to probably hear the extent of that injury and the severity of it, probably in the preview for the Chelsea game from Pep Guardiola, who's going to be asked about John Stones, no doubt, which is a massive blow. It's a really big blow. But we have options. We have options, and that's what I'm going to get into right now. 3 systems that we could play that really help and prove that we don't need John Stones. He's a massive player for us, and it's huge, but I don't think we need him. If you remember rightly, my go-to will be Manuel Akanji. Now, I've heard quite a few other channels, in fact, I can't remember which exactly, don't want to point the finger, but a lot of them were saying, Bernardo Silva, get him in defensive midfield, which makes no sense. It makes no sense, because I'm sure you understand that Bernardo Silva in defensive midfield isn't just defensive midfield. Not in Manchester City's side. John Stones isn't just a defensive midfielder. He's a halfback. You know, this new inverted centre-back role that, with the ball, pushes in. Sits alongside Rodri in defensive midfield when we have the ball. Without the ball, he has to drop back and play centre-back. Are you going to ask Bernardo Silva to push back, drop back and be a centre-back? Because he ain't clearing anything. He can jump and he's a good player, but that's the one area I don't really want to see Bernardo Silva is centre-back alongside Ruben Diaz. Sorry, ain't going to work. Not a chance in hell is that going to happen. He could play in a different system alongside Rodri that doesn't require him to drop back, and I'll prove that shortly. But before I do, I wanted to say that Manuel Akanji, I think, is the go-to, the most likely replacement, and we've already seen it this season. I'm sure plenty of City fans have forgotten already that Manuel Akanji was pushing incredibly far forward this earlier on in the season, and that was during a period when Nathan Ake was very much available. He is the alternative. I think he could do a job in that role, but here's some heat maps for you. You're going to pop them on the screen. This is Manuel Akanji versus Nottingham Forest. As you can see, he's in the attacking half for the majority of the game. A little bit along that, a bit of that Kevin De Bruyne role, isn't he? In that particular pitch, space of the pitch there. That De Bruyne loved whipping in crosses for Erling Haaland from that position. This season, it's a bit of a different role, but Akanji is playing much more advanced than he was against Forest at the start of the season. Here you can see West Ham, same again, a little bit more retreated due to defensive responsibilities. He was pushed further forward, but predominantly in the attacking half of the pitch. And here you can see against Wolves, same again. We lost the game, but same role for Manuel Akanji, which is the John Stones role, pushing into midfield when we have the ball. Then John Stones returns, and here you can see his heat map, Manuel Akanji's heat map against Brighton. As you can see, very, very different. John Stones is on the pitch at this time. This was actually a game where Manuel Akanji got himself sent off, but he was playing part of a back 3 for the majority of the game with John Stones pushing further forward. So as you can see, Manuel Akanji was used already in that John Stones role. I think he can do it again. A little bit of a downgrade, I'll admit that. I think Manuel Akanji is a fantastic player. His ball retention's incredible. He has an average pass percentage completion this season of 95%. I know you're going to say, oh, well, they're all sideways passes. Well, they're not, are they? Because I've just shown you the heat maps on your screen. The heat maps indicate that he was playing in a much more advanced role, farther up the pitch than just playing sideways passes. In that midfield role, he's got to pass it forward, he's got to break the lines, and he was doing that and maintaining a 95% passing accuracy in the process. So I think Manuel Akanji can absolutely do this role. There are other systems though, so let's get onto the system side of things now and what we can do. What are the options we've got if Manuel Akanji doesn't fit the bill for certain games? So let's just stick with the formation now. Obviously Ederson goes in goal. Now, what we've been gotten used to seeing this season is Kyle Walker playing at right back, Ruben Diaz probably the left side of the centre back, and then Manuel Akanji will now have to tuck in as the centre back. This is the first system, just to make it clear to you what I think we could use, which is a familiar system. Rodri's going to sit in front of the back four, of course, as well as Julian Alvarez tends to now play in that number 10 role, a little bit of the De Bruyne-esque role. Alongside Phil Foden potentially. Further wide, we've had Bernardo Silva, and then we've had Jeremy Doku chilling on the... I say chilling, he's on fire, isn't he? He's not chilling at all. He's absolutely scintillating. He's sizzling Jeremy Doku at the minute, so he's very much not chilling. But then Erling Haaland up top as well. Now, in practice, the game would obviously play out more like this, with these players being further up the pitch like that. And then when we have the ball, Rodri tends to push into the defensive midfield role, and we complete the box by the attacker, which has normally been John Stones in the last month or so. We're pushing in to complete that box in the middle of the field, with the corners of the box being Akanji, Rodri, Foden and Alvarez. Kyle Walker tucking in, becoming part of a back three with Diaz and Guardiola. That's my favourite system. I think that's predominantly what Pep will go with. There are other options though. There are other options. You could see Kyle Walker playing in this system, and in a system that suits Bernardo Silva to play in defensive midfield, or I say defensive midfield, in midfield, let's say, alongside Rodri. This is a system that could see Bernardo Silva, because there is no pressure on Bernardo Silva to get back and drop into a centre-back role, because you can't ask Bernardo Silva to drop into centre-back. He can be in that part of the pitch to collect the ball off the centre-backs, but you're not going to ask him to defend as a centre-back. Surely not. I'm sure he could do a job, but not to the extent of our other centre-backs, because we've got an army of them. Let's use them. Rodri in the middle. Now, Bernardo Silva. This is a system that we've been playing as well this season, with Kyle Walker almost being like a wing back, almost like a winger as well with Doku. And that's the system we've been playing for the majority of this season. The majority. Since John Stones has come back, that's not been the majority. This is the system we started the season with Kyle Walker being a wing back. As a wing back, that emphasis on the back. Doku, less so. Much more of a wing forward, if that makes sense at all. Very little pressure to get back. He does get back, Jeremy Doku, but not so much in the sense of there's not as much responsibility compared to Kyle Walker on the other side. So when we have the ball, this is how the team usually sets up, with the three at the back, Akanji, Diaz and Guardiola. I'm happy with that. Very comfortable with that. Kyle Walker, the issue with this system is Kyle Walker's emphasis on getting forward. He's still required to build triangles over here with these two players, with Alvarez and Bernardo Silva. And Alvarez and Bernardo Silva, no problem. You want to see the fluidity between these three players, rotating potentially and getting it in circulation between one another to split defences and create channels. But ultimately, this system is all about keeping players close to Erling Haaland. That's why Alvarez and Phil Foden are tucked in so neatly alongside them. But Bernardo Silva predominantly being there. But the issue is Kyle Walker. How creative can he be? Because it's not his side of the pitch, the attacking side of the pitch. He is a defender, and a very good one. Creatively, he's not bad. He's just not up to the standards of Alvarez, Bernardo Silva, and whipping in a ball. I want to see Alvarez crossing the ball, Bernardo Silva crossing the ball. But there will come a time where Kyle Walker has to cross the ball, and he's very much get to the byline and drill it hard and low and kind of hope for the best with his crosses. He doesn't really find a player quite as well as Alvarez and Bernardo Silva, who tend to get their head up, look, see Erling Haaland peeling away to the back post, and just ghost one back post, just glide it in there for him to nod it in. That's their bread and butter. Kyle Walker's not a very delicate crosser. He's not assured, and he's not as composed as the other players that we've got at crossing. And that's the side of this game, this system in particular, that worries me, is the creativity that Kyle Walker offers coming up and down the pitch. Now, the third system that we could play, and I'm sure you've already figured it out as well, this one involves Rico Lewis. So there is No Kyle Walker in this team, unfortunately, which is a big blow. You know, how many games do you want to play without Kyle Walker? In the Premier League and the Champions League knockout stages, not many, in truth, because of what Kyle Walker offers defensively. That's what I like. But this system could work just as well in games we have played. Young boys, for example, bottom half of the Premier League, we could play in these sort of systems with Rico Lewis. So Bernardo Silva going back out there, and the starting 11 would look like this on paper, like that, with Rico Lewis and a flat back four, but the game would change once the whistle goes and City tend to dominate the ball with possession. You'd like to see Rico Lewis inverting, a familiar inverted fullback that we've seen tucking in alongside Rodri, and these three, again, become the back three. Rico Lewis only has to get back into right back position, not quite having to tuck back in, which is what John Stones has to do. It's a harder job. It's a harder job because tucking in like this, going back and forth like John Stones tends to do when it was a half-back role, which in this case would be Manuel Akanji dropping back and forth, that's an easier job because it's a straight line. You have less individuals to worry about because you don't have the wingers to worry about. Rico Lewis's job is infinitely harder. Inverting as a fullback is much, much harder than playing the half-back role, which is why Pep preferred it in that second half of our treble-winning season. John Stones' role was vital, and it just nullified midfield. We had complete domination for pretty much every single one of our last 10 games of last season in midfield. No one could touch us in midfield with John Stones there. Rico Lewis, it brings a little bit more fluidity going forward, a little bit more creativity. I think he's a little bit more of a terrier in terms of creativity. He offers something a little bit more than John Stones does, but lacking in physicality. How much assurance are we going to get in receiving the ball? Can he keep the ball as well as John Stones? Because his retention's incredible. It's a huge blow losing John Stones, but for me, those are your three systems. So it isn't all doom and gloom. It isn't all doom and gloom. I think there's plenty of things to be positive about, and we managed to start the season so well without John Stones. We can do it again. Rodri would be the big one, but we can't pretend it isn't a blow. This is a huge blow, losing John Stones. It really, really is. But, Blues, what do you think? What do you think life's going to be like without John Stones? What system would you prefer? Would you rather see Akanji going in there? Would you see Ake going in there? Would you prefer Rico Lewis? Even Guardiola. I think Guardiola could do it, potentially in the long run. Right now he's finding his feet. Let's not make it even harder to find your feet by start rotating him and putting him in positions that he's not quite ready to get used to yet. Let's find his feet at that left side of a three centre-back role. I like where Guardiola is. I prefer him there right now, but future, I see Guardiola pushing forward. What do you think, Blues? Get your comments in below. I really want to hear them. Drop a like on the video. It really does help. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is typical City now, holding up Silva.